Hey guys, welcome to another interview here. This interview is going to be a fun one. So we're doing a follow-up interview with Tomas. So you saw his interview a long time ago with just himself. Now his wife Charlotte joins us, and his newborn 5-month-old, right?
Yep, 5 months.
Yeah, Ivor is here. Um, so I guess just to get to the point here, Charlotte, we heard last time from Thomas's point of view on what happened back then, how the relationship was like back then. From your point of view, how are things like back then?
So we had really high highs, but we also had really low lows. So we've always had a great time together. When we're in a good place, things are awesome. But where we really hit roadblocks is when we try to talk about anything difficult from either of our sides. If either of us brought up something, that the other person, maybe needed to look at, or, just how we were feeling about things, we were not good at holding space for each other. We both got really defensive, and it just created this back and forth that continued to escalate. And we just had these long, drawn out arguments, and we really got nowhere, which created a lot of resentment between us.
Yeah. What were some of the difficult things that you're referring to here, you would think?
I think the biggest thing, like if we're talking general, was, just day-to-day stuff, was not feeling heard, not feeling like the other person was taking on board how we were feeling, what we were saying. Just like, okay, well, I brought this up because I wanted to, hopefully make some progress here. But now I feel like it's being turned against me, and I kind of wish I didn't say anything. And I think we were both making those mistakes. We were, I brought this up last time and you didn't, do this for me. Why should I do this for you? Just that really negative tit for tat. Yeah.
Yeah. Thomas, was that kind of what you were seeing as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think spot on. It was very much like that. You lay yourself vulnerable and bare, and it was kind of like this was the worst thing that I could have done.
Yeah.
Because it always backfired, and we both felt that way, and it was difficult. It's kind of like, and it was always patched up by this, love that we have for each other, and we just kind of kept moving forward like you do, like unknowingly, like we didn't know any better. I think it was simply down to that, like we were dumb enough just to kind of keep going.
Yeah. It's I think we went through the same period too, where, and this is kind of the cycle that we went through, right? Where we would have a conflict and we would argue. And when I said something that was hurtful to my partner, that would make it, I think, harder for her to, or easier for her, I guess, to say hurtful to me. And whenever she said something hurtful to me, I would retaliate back. And it would just escalate in that one conversation. But then that one conversation also, you hold that as resentment, as a lot of like triggers. We say the word triggers a lot. So the next time we have a tough conversation that triggers us, and we have the same cycle again, and over time, it lowered our energy to actually talk about things. So we read books and stuff like that, and we knew what we were supposed to say. We knew what we were supposed to do. But then in our hearts, we cannot bring ourselves to say it because there's so much resentment at this point. And at that point, that's when things really went downhill for us, where both of us stopped trying, in a sense. So, Charlotte, for you, obviously there was a big event. There was like a turning point event in your mind where you said, enough is enough. This is how far I'm willing to go with this relationship. What was that moment for you? What was the deal breaker for you? When did that occur?
So the deal breaker for me was the infidelity. And not the first time or the second time, but the real deal breaker was the third time. Because I'd heard the promises, I'd heard, what was going to change. This will never happen again. And by the third time I found something out, I just didn't feel like there was any hope. I didn't feel like, okay, these changes that were going to happen haven't. And how, quite honestly, how can I trust this person again? That that for me is when I said, okay, enough's enough. I don't know what else to do.
Yeah. And Thomas, from your perspective, obviously, you know, at that point, your infidelity was hurting your partner quite a bit. And this is another instance where you know, I think, what you were supposed to do, but you just maybe couldn't do it. What was going through your heart and mind at that point in time to where you kept doing something that you know is hurting someone you love?
A good question. I mean, you know, all of that stems back into my relationship with myself. To start off with, like, you know, so I started deep diving into that, and just kind of understanding eventually that no matter how much I could feel that, you know, it was Charlotte's fault in some areas, not in relation to the infidelity, but still having that part, that kind of whole thing of, well, you did this, that kind of standing up for myself in some sort of pointless way in a situation where I should have really just kind of surrendered and gone, like, this is, you know, this is my fault. I have to own this. I have to turn this around. And getting to that realization that, you know what, this is all on me. We're here because of my actions, and I need to take some responsibility. And I never did that before.
Yeah, and I think I went through the same stage too, Thomas, where we dealt with our own, like both of us actually, for our case was we had both our own infidelity moments. And whenever we, you know, I think when we had a conversation 4 years later about it, we both said, like, okay, I think this was a manifestation really of the anger that we felt towards the relationship that we often made up, because we were fed by the victim mindset. For example, we were fed by this notion of always trying to look for other people and blaming other people, but never looking within to see, how am I contributing to this cycle that we're having? Because like we established before, you know, you felt like you were unhappy and you were probably feeling quite unsatisfied with the relationship, but you were only looking at what was her contribution to my dissatisfaction, but not really how was I perpetuating and worsening this feedback loop here in this relationship and making it actually harder for myself. And Charlotte, for you, it's interesting you mentioned there was 3 instances of this. So why not say, you know what, isn't it enough? I don't have any trust after the first or second time.
So the first time, I think I just, you know, I'll always believe that people can change and progress. Like that's a fundamental belief that I had. And, you know, at that stage, we've been married for 4 years. And I wasn't ready to just give up on that. I really wanted to, you know, see if he could do what he said he was going to do and improve on things and have, you know, just make everything better. I love him. I wasn't ready to let go. It wasn't as easy as I thought it would, because I always thought, like, you know, I'm quite a strong-headed person. And I always thought, not if someone cheats on me, that's it. I'm done. And that wasn't the case for me. So that was an interesting realization. And then the second time, you know, quite honestly, I was pregnant with our now 3-year-old son. And that was really hard because, you know, neither of us have family here. And, you know, how pregnant was I? Maybe 5 months pregnant. Yeah. And so planning for this family, knowing that if I break up with my partner, I'm not going to have anyone else to support me here in the same way that a partner, like family members would. And, you know, not wanting to, you know, move back to the States or anything like that, because, you know, for all of everything that we were going through in our relationship, Thomas is an amazing dad. And I always knew that I wanted to co-parent with him regardless of what was going to happen. So yeah, like long answer short, I was pregnant and it wasn't the right time to end anything.
And I think if you could entertain me for a bit, you touched on something very important there, which so when we were facing our doubts of each other because of the infidelity, we realized that infidelity issues are not really that black and white. So first of all, I guess my first question to you is, do you feel like right now, because the thing that people say is, once a cheater, always a cheater kind of thing. Do you, Charlotte, have any worries about, do you hold that against this relationship, that past, where that's always in the back of your head, the nagging feeling where like, I don't know if I can fully trust Thomas ever. I can get close, but yeah.
I think previously it was more so a worry for me that we would never, like, I would never be able to get over it. Like I was, even though I wanted to keep trying in the relationship, okay, buddy, I was always transparent in the sense that like, I don't know if I will be able to get over this. That was a big roadblock for me. And yeah, like definitely just, I didn't have it within myself to move on from it in a positive way. Like, you know, the resentment that we had from all the, you know, like I said, the day-to-day stuff, the, you know, not holding space for each other and things like that, that resentment just got amplified times a million. And yeah, you know, if I could go back now and change my behavior in that and take a little bit more accountability, it's like, well, you know, I'm not responsible for his actions, but I'm definitely responsible for how I react. And how I reacted was definitely not moving us forward. You know, I was really, anytime I was hurting, I wanted to sort of say, I'm hurting, you make it better. This is your responsibility, instead of doing the work myself. And that was another vicious cycle, which, you know, probably, I'm not going to speak for Thomas, but I'm sure it didn't help prevent further episodes of infidelity. Again, it's not my fault, but I was not helping the situation to move forward.
Yeah. And the mindset that you're taking on, Charlotte, is such a commendable mindset, and it's such a rare mindset. I don't think you put like 100 people in the room, I think only one person would be having that mindset, right? Because everywhere you go, you're always told to like, oh, don't take someone like that. You deserve better. Get out of there. Find something else. And so, but instead you actually look within and say, okay, sure, the problem is here now, but the question is not, okay, whose fault it is, or is it? It's more of what can we do next? And I think that was so commendable of you to do that. And I think the other thing too you mentioned was, you know, one of the biggest realizations I made with my partner when I was making her so miserable was she finally said to me, Jeff, okay, let's see things from my point of view here, right? You know, for women, their prime is not like men. Meaning for women, if you're like past 30, you're kind of past your prime a bit, right? Biologically,
on the definition of prime, but okay.
It depends. But for her definition of prime, like biologically speaking, in terms of like being kind of a catch in the dating world, for example, you know, past 30 for her was too much. And so she said, like, you know, when I choose to leave you, Jeff, you know, think about it from my side, right? So I'm saying I will leave this world of familiarity. I will leave this world where I get financial security, for example. I will leave everything that I had so that I can basically not be in your life. So basically, you know how people say, I will not even take that if it was given to me for free. She was basically saying, I would pay to get out of your life right now. I would pay a massive cost to get out of your life right now.
Yes.
And I think that was you in the first and second instance. You were saying like, I'm still not willing to pay that much of a cost to get out of Thomas's life right now. But at the third one, that's when you were like, I'm out. And I think,
100%. That was a very clear line for me. It's like, I can't do this again, for sure.
Yeah. And I think it wasn't just the infidelity that really got you to feel hopeless. It was the fact that, okay, there was this infidelity, but then I'm in a position now where I can't even talk about it. We can't even resolve anything. I don't trust anything you say anymore. There was no safety to either express or to listen. There was just that bridge is like broken, basically. Bridge of communication is broken. And I think that was the key difference, I think, between the first and second time and the third time, which is that bridge. Once that bridge was broken, you're like, okay, there's no way we can ever move on from this.
Yeah.
And that, again, guys, shows like really the root of a lot of relationship issues is not the problem itself. It's rarely the problem itself. It's always the underlying broken safety behind it. You break that, that's it. It's over, right? So when you men are in a position where you're on the brink of a divorce, you're on the brink of something really bad where your partner says it's too late, she doesn't want to change her mind, whatever it is, that's when you know that safety bridge is already broken. And you got to start reestablishing that and not focus on this other problems here. So contrast. So I guess before we contrast things to how things are like now, Charlotte, how done were you at that point in time?
I was done. I literally had a reminder of my phone saying, okay, we've been separated from a year from this date. We can get divorced on this day. Like I was counting down.
Wow. Because in Australia, I guess you have to be separated a certain number of months or days before you can.
Yeah, you have to be separated for a year.
A year. Okay.
Yeah, in the state that we live in.
Yeah. And I'm sure you saw Thomas trying. Was Thomas trying to convince you to not leave at any point?
Yes and no. He really respected my decision at that point. He was clear that it wasn't what he wanted, but he understood from my perspective that is the decision I was going to come to. Because I had also been really clear the second time that, look, if this happens again, I'm out. So I don't think there were any surprises there. Yeah, I was done. I did not think that there was any way that we were going to come back from it.
Thomas, from your point of view, you already accepted it too? You're like, yeah, she's done. Or
I mean, you'd be an idiot to kind of think otherwise. You're like, okay, there wasn't a leg to stand on. There wasn't even a ledge to stand on, even if you had legs. It's like, there was 100% that I understand it. But it was also a case of we lived together. We didn't move apart. We lived together. And, like when you had that reminder, and it's just like, at the end of the day, I love her. I want to be with her. So, and then I found the program, and then there was, okay, I'm going to sink my teeth into this. Like, to hear what she's saying and doing, like, I can't control that. And yeah, thank heavens for that.
Yeah. So fast forward to now. Charlotte, how would you describe the relationship now? How would you describe your own feelings about it, about Thomas, about the whole thing you guys have now?
I'm so happy with where we're at now. Like, for everything that we've gone through, for us to be here, we're coming up on 9 years of marriage, and it's pretty amazing. Like I feel like we're both a lot more resilient as individuals from it, a lot more compassionate just towards each other, towards other people, because of what we've gone through. And we still have room for improvement in certain areas and communication and stuff like that. But I think we understand that, and we know the direction that we want to go. I think we'll always have room for improvement. I think that's just life. But the way that we're able to deal with arguments or put them on pause when they're not being constructive and say, okay, let's come back to this when we're both in a better headspace, or, actually like be able to say, hey, I want to be able to tell you this and it just be about this and not anything else. Yeah. And actually get better at holding that space for each other without retaliating, be like, well, last week or blah, 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 just holding all that other stuff that doesn't actually matter and just focusing on, okay, you want to express this. I might not like what you have to say, but I need to just sit here, listen to you so that you feel heard. Yeah. So things like that. Like I said, we still have improvement to make, but we do such a better job at it.
And I think you said a beautiful point there, because like, it's almost like, again, that negative feedback loop you guys were having was making it so hard for both of you to want to do something nice, to want to become your best. Oh, yeah. Now it's sort of like it's reversed, right? Where I think by day, month by month, you're having more and more energy, more and more will to actually be your best, to actually show up as your best. That's a massive thing. And I think the other thing too is, sure, problems are still always going to exist. Like, we just finished building our house. We're just planning our wedding right now. And there's so many issues that come up. And just by having two people being in a relationship in the first place, we just have differences of opinions that eventually become kind of like sticking points. But it's not that we don't have those sticking points. It's like we do have them, but then the way we approach it is a much more safe environment for us to express and listen both, where we actually want, like you both are inspiring each other to become the best kind of thing. It's really
100%. Yeah, it's the opposite of what we did before. Instead of bringing each other down, we're bringing each other up.
Yeah.
And I mean, also like, look at what we have on our plate now compared to then.
Yeah.
Like,
So
we got
they had just have this
kids.
5-month-old. I know, Thomas, you were telling me about some difficulties, challenge. We don't have to get into it, but like the challenges of having a newborn. The third child is just adds so much more to your plate.
Yeah,
than one or two.
100%. And yeah, children are beautiful, but they don't make a relationship any easier. So yeah, the fact that we can be in this place in the thick of it with little kids is, yeah, it feels really good. It feels so nice. And I just feel like as a person now, I feel lighter and just so much happier. There's not this heaviness around our day-to-day relationship and the uncertainty. Like, you know, there's going to be stuff come up. That's life, but I know we're going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, you know, I was telling Thomas before this call about how, you know, with my job, with dealing with so many relationship problems, I have to kind of add like a filter for myself to go, okay, I'm going away from client mode to my relationship mode. And sometimes like after that, I go downstairs, we have dinner together, and I look at my partner, and it's just that feeling of like softness, that bliss, that comfort, that, I don't know, like it's a very indescribable feeling to have that lightness over there.
Yes. So it's such a relief.
It's such a relief. Yeah.
It is.
I mean, I think during the time we were apart, I learned a lot what you kind of wanted. And I think since we got back together, that's really apparent that here's two people who are actually paying great attention to the other one. And yeah, I mean, it's madness sometimes, absolutely madness. And we could probably slow down and do a little bit less. We're both trying to launch our own businesses on the side. And, you know, I'm still playing football a couple of times a week. And it's just like, okay, where is the time? But I think we can both recognize that when it gets a little bit shitty, because we all have shitty days, it's never the case of, oh, well, you know, why are you pissed off with me? And you know, feeling that kind of angst that it was so visible. We'd be so anxious about, we're so tethered to the other person's mood. And now it's just like, you know what? I get it. You've had a shit day. You know, whatever, if that's what you need to do, or, you know, if there's a snide comment or like a raised tone, it's I see it, but I'm just gonna let it pass. It's like it's not important. It's the small day-to-day stuff never puts us, at least never puts me to the point where I'm like where I used to be, where I'd go and I'd have resentment because I had to do the dishes.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And I want to talk about that later on. I want to make that a big topic later on because yeah, because that's an interesting one. Thomas, though, from your perspective, contrast it. How are things now versus before, from your point of view?
I mean, it's great. It's like I feel valued. You know, I feel like I'm appreciated for the man that I am and that I'm trying to be, and it's just I feel accepted. I didn't really feel like that before. So that's really, really big. And I feel good, you know, like I do good things for her and vice versa. We have a good life. Our life has improved vastly over this period because it was looking pretty dire. And I think a year and a half, I don't know, I found another zone to play in professionally, and that's brought incredible financial windfall. And then it's not everything, but it feels better. It's nicer for everyone. Yeah. But yeah, I feel I have someone that I can really rely on in all aspects, because it's parenting, it's all sorts, it's navigating a marriage, and yeah. I feel like
I'm gonna address some elephant in the room here.
Together.
So I'm addressing a big elephant in the room for you, Thomas, right? A lot of people watching this, they're going to be saying, they're going to still not trust you. They're still going to look at you and go like, you were an unloyal person.
Yeah.
I mean, from the inside, like what would you say to those people?
But don't trust me.
Yeah.
I mean, I 100% understand. Like, if I sat opposite myself, I would feel exactly the same. I would have, if this was me sitting and talking to my sister's man, I would feel exactly the same.
Mm. Mm.
You know,
But why do you like, how are you internally so convinced that no, I'm not that person I was before? I am different. Like, what fuels that conviction for you to say I'm different?
I just know I am different, and I want to go places moving forward. And you know, I still have a long way to go. There's loads of traits that I want to leave behind, and it doesn't happen overnight. And I know I'm a work in progress. But I keep chipping away at it. It's like some days I'm going to feel really great about who I am and who I'm becoming. Other days I'm not. Other days I'm going to get sucked back into, you know, the shame and the guilt and the past darkness. But that's just how it is. You just go keep going. Like, at least now I feel like there's a roadmap ahead, where there was before it was just like, oh, whatever. I don't even know where I'm going anyway. It's just like, what's the point? I may as well live up to this kind of bad perception of me. And I never feel that anymore. That
Yeah.
I might as well live up to this image that people may have of me. And also, all I care about is her, what she thinks of me. If someone else goes, I can take it. It's not.
Yeah.
If we were to sit at a dinner party and I was being attacked by friends and friends of yours, I could take it.
Yeah.
It wouldn't rile me, or there's only to a point that I'd take something in that setting, but I'd hold the space for someone to have a go at me, because I know I deserve that.
Yeah. And you know, I look back at the labels that was placed on me too when I was younger. I had a lot of like issues with managing my emotions. And Charlotte, feel free to, if you need to like put him to bed, just let me know. We can pause the interview at any time.
Yeah, I think he's fading. I think
okay.
10 minutes. Is that okay?
Let's pause it. Yeah, let's definitely pause it for a bit.
Sorry. All right.
No worries. All right, sorry for the intermission, guys. We had to put Ivor to bed. Thomas, I think what we left off was you were talking to us about how you like there's this thing within you that trusts yourself. And I think you mentioned something very interesting, which is, you know, if I look back at the labels that was placed on me when I was a kid, I was known as like the angry person, right? At one point I was known as the person who had no loyalty, who had no, like, every sense of toxic masculinity there was, I kind of had it too. But, you know, sometimes like the conversation comes up now to where she would ask me like, what makes you so sure that you will never do those things again? And it's almost that confidence in that process for me. I know what caused me to degrade in those points of time. And once I know what caused me to degrade, and I know how to catch myself, I know how to rescue myself, it's just impossible for you to ever let yourself go down there. You know, and I kin it to my business sometimes too, where, you know, my dad, he has never started a business. So when I was first making money, he said to me like, well, enjoy it while it lasts. And I took that really hard, because for the next 3 months, I was like, no, like there's no way my business can ever go bust. I know exactly the levers I'm pulling. I know it, like before it goes bust, I will always pivot before then. It's kind of the same thing. Like I know the process so well. Is that kind of how you would describe your feelings here?
I mean, I think it's spot on in that sense. It's more of a case of, I know what I'm doing. Some days I'm doing it great. Some days I'm not, but I'm doing it, and there's a cause, there's a reason, and there's a roadmap. And I don't know I'm not the finished article. I think that's one of the main things that I keep telling myself. It's like, you're not done. you are going to morph into something else. You're going to be, it's not about being hard on myself and going like, okay, you need to do better, but I want to do better. And that's in all areas of my life. And it's just a process. And finally I found a process to do that. And I think the main thing is that I can take what she's telling me now without it derailing me. And do I make an instant switch and become precisely the way you want? No, but like I'm aware of it, and it's, you know, it's improving. And like as long as you're improving and moving forward, then that to me is just like, okay, that's enough of confidence in my own ability that I need. And I'm not gonna let that beat me by putting that shit in my head. If I don't believe that I can do it, I don't care what anyone else thinks. Like it's me versus me, and I'm gonna keep going.
And Charlotte, what fuels your trust? Despite everything you guys have been through, what fuels your trust now?
I think, you know, time is a big player in that. The more time that goes on, the more reassurance he gives me, because these are conversations that we've had a number of times, you know, when we were deciding to get back together and, you know, having another kid and all of these things. It was like, okay, I've asked the exact same question. How do you know that this is not going to be something that reoccurs again? And yeah, you've given me a similar answer in that. It's like, you basically not going to let yourself go backwards in that sense. You've come too far. And I think it's just also the day-to-day stuff. I've seen such a change in him taking accountability. Like that was the biggest change, is really taking accountability, not putting blame on anyone else or anything else, you know, stuff like this generally, you know, whatever. There's lots of deep-rooted childhood stuff, as most people have, things like that, you know, and that's not to push that all to the side, but the conversation really changed. Okay, this is the man I am now. This is who I want to be. I'm taking accountability for this. And that just gave me so much reassurance that I could see, one, he was taking action by doing the course. It's like, okay, you actually see that you can improve. You're taking action. And I also see it in your behavior, just accountability in all areas.
Yeah. And in your write-up to me, you said something interesting, which is what we talk about in the program too, which is that not only did you see Tomas giving an effort to doing the course, but also when you made it pretty much impossible and hopeless for him, you said to him like, yeah, I don't really care what you do right now. It's too late. And you basically removed any incentive for Tomas to keep going with the course and stuff like that. He still did it. Why do you think that was so? Why do you think that made the difference for you? Why do you think that the fact that when you made it so hopeless for him and he kept going, that was what changed it for you? Why do you think that was in your mind?
Because it seemed really genuine at that point. Because when I first heard he was doing the course, I was like, oh, that's really awesome. You're working on yourself. You know, too little, too late for you and I, but good for you. Like, I'm always going to be in your corner. We've got kids together. Like, I'm always going to want the best for you. Like, that's awesome. But yeah, the more I saw him kept going with it, I knew he was doing it for him. And I think for any change to be sustainable, you have to do it for you and only you. You know, of course, like if it's for the relationship and things like that, but I could tell that you were trying to better yourself as a person that was going to affect all of your relationships. And I just, like I said, it seemed so genuine and sustainable. If you do it for you, it's sustainable.
The analogy that I give in the program is like, you know, I think, Charlotte, at that point in time, you were trying to see who is Tomas really, right? Not who does Tomas want to be? Who does Tomas think he should be? Because he probably said a lot of things that sounded great, but then it's like, not gonna, you're not cutting it. So you want to see like when no one's watching Tomas, when there's no hope of having something, who is he really? It's almost like, imagine you're a scientist conducting like an experiment, right? And if you say, for example, hey, this study is about XYZ, you can no longer trust the data, because you would know these people are going to show up as their best selves. because they know they're being studied on these things, on these aspects. But what if you said, okay, you're going to be studying on XYZ and test is over, and you say to tell them, go to the next room, please, and mingle with the other people. And that's the actual experiment when you say it's over already. And so I don't think you were trying to do this like consciously, but you were kind of like putting yourself in a position where you say, okay, I feel hopeless. But when you were thinking back to what Tomas was doing, and you were thinking, should I believe him or not? Should I trust him or not? You're looking at those moments to go, wait, that was a moment when he thought the test was over. That was a moment when he thought everything was over. And he's still doing that. And that kind of make you kind of doubt your initial decision. Was that kind of what was going on in your mind at that point? Something like that?
Yeah, it was. And, it took a while to get there. I had to see this, continue, but I did. Yeah. And it was just nice and reassuring to see, like, as Tomas mentioned, we were still living together throughout our separation. So, we had lots of day-to-day interactions, and just to see that really upward trajectory was really positive. And one thing you said to me, I was thinking about this while I was putting Ivor down. One thing you kept saying to me when you were doing the course, kind of jokingly was, but I know you're serious. He's like, oh, it'd be such a shame for you to, let someone else get this improved version of me now that I'm putting all this work in. And I just sort of laughed it off. I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. That's your. But I think eventually I really did think about that. And I was like, I've always known Tomas's potential. Like I wouldn't have been with him throughout everything either, because he is fundamentally a really great person. And to walk away at that point, and it's such a different, I'm not saying that people with kids should stay together when they're unhappy. I'm not saying that at all. But it makes you think about the relationship a lot more when you do have children. The stakes are a lot higher if you separate. And that person is always going to have to be in your life, regardless of when you're together or apart. So that added another element for me. It was like, yep, I want to, reap the benefits of you doing all this work. And how can I separate our family when actually you are the man that I want to be with? That would definitely played on my mind a lot.
Yeah. And I think the biggest shame, Charlotte, is when I see men who, they're faced with a situation where like their partner says, I want a divorce and there's something you can do to change my mind. And they kind of use that as a reason to say, you know what, I'll give up at that point. And the thing I always say to them is, first and foremost, we deal with long-term relationships exclusively. So we're not like into teaching people how to date and stuff like that. So if you've been in a long-term relationship, there's no way either of you can just shut off. Like, even though you say, I want a divorce, and I'm not coming back, that's more of an active promise you're making to yourself, despite the fact that you want to stay. So first of all, like when I say your partner wants divorce, that's not when it's over. That's actually when it starts, right? Because that's when she tells you that's when she says, as it is, I'm hopeless right now. But when I tell you that it's hopeless, I kind of secretly want to see what you would do with that. If you get all needy and desperate and try to pull me back, and you don't even wake up to your own faults at that point, and the fact that you need to grow in a massive way, I think you would see that as an easy confirmation that maybe I'm making the right choice. Maybe this is right to leave. But then if you start to see what Tomas was doing, which is like, oh, this guy, he's really changing no matter what I do, that'll make you question the other side too. But that's when, just like that experiment, right? When you say consciously it's over, subconsciously, I think you are also saying that's when the experiment really begins. When I'm really going to watch you this time. And so
that's not what I consciously was doing. I was definitely done at that point, but that's what it ended up being. That's what it ended up being, which is, the greatest blessing.
For sure. And it's a very subconscious thing, which is, sometimes people say to me too, well, if she was watching me all along and she wanted to wait along, why didn't she tell me? It's like, well, first of all, she can't really tell you that because then that will ruin the test again in her mind. But then second of all, most people doing this don't even know they're doing this. But this is what humans do in general, right? It's like when you're deciding, Thomas too, when you're deciding what to trust this person or no, you're not devising tests and going like, let me see what he does here. It's more like, let's look at the 100 things that he did. There's 99 things that I can see where it's like, I don't know if I can trust the data there, but he did this one thing. Ooh, that changes a lot of things, that one thing. And I think that was what you were doing too. You're not like devising some test. It's more of like a reflective. It was the way you reflected on that relationship, on Thomas, etc., on his changes, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Thomas, like when you joined the program, right? You said you actually quit your job to do the program. I think you mentioned that briefly in our first interview, but I didn't realize it was such a big deal. But I want to stress on that now. Like, what made you say, let me quit my job to focus on this program?
I mean, there's two prongs in that sense. It's like the job that I had was very stressful, and I'd come to the point where it's time to take a break. So I devised a way where I could have 4 weeks off. That turned into 8, and then that turned into quitting. Luckily, I had a very good relationship with the business, and I just, I was really transparent. This is going on, and I don't have the ability not to take this into work, and I don't want to soil the relationships that I have here by me being an asshole because of what's going on at home. But I also realized that the only way that I get a grip on this is to sink the adequate amount of time in. This wasn't like, a lazy 15 minutes in the car. This is like, nah, I got to do this. And I struggled so badly in the beginning to wrap my head around it. And then that kind of stubbornness kicked in. So like, okay, you know what? I'm going to do this. And it was also a case where I know you weren't happy at the time, but I was also like, well, I'm actually in a position where I don't have to take her opinion about it on board because we're not together.
Charlotte, how did you feel when you heard this?
I forgot about that, to be honest.
You were
I didn't understand what
you were pissed because, like, we strangled the money coming in, and yeah, it wasn't. I understand that you're upset about it, but you know what? I had to do that, and I did it, and I'm really happy I did.
Yeah,
me too. Forgot about that.
You can thank me later.
Charlotte, for your point of view, when you found out that Thomas was doing this program, what were the suspicions and the voices going on in your head at that point in time?
Now this is making me think about this time a little bit more clearly again. I think like a little bit of what I said before is like, aside from the quitting his job, like, Thomas doesn't do anything in halves, clearly. He was like going all in with this, which, in hindsight is probably, clearly exactly what you needed to do.
I wouldn't have made a dent into it. Otherwise, I would not have.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm happy that was the case, but I was kind of like, okay, he's like, throwing a Hail Mary pretty hard here just to see, but whatever, good for him if he's bettering himself. Like, I felt like it was too late, and I was kind of like, well, why didn't you care this much previously when I had expressed how hurt I was, in other times. But
it's almost like that. Why now? Why wait until things are so bad? Yeah.
What I was feeling, but reflectively, we all take our time to get to that place where we do want to make a change. But yeah, I thought it was too little too late for us, but yeah, good for you for wanting to better yourself.
How much of the program did Thomas share at that point?
You shared bits of it with me, just a reflective in our relationship and how, quite honestly, toxic it could be. How really tethered we were to each other, like that. When we would talk about that was pretty eye-opening, of just yeah, we were just clutching onto each other, you know, oh, he's in a bad mood, blah, blah, you know, just taking everything so personally with each other. And like we've talked about before, the arguing, the not holding space, like things we were kind of aware of that were problematic, but I think you got a different viewpoint on that, which was interesting to hear about. Yeah, you shared because we weren't together, you shared little bits of it with me. They were eye-opening. And then yeah, as we got back together, you shared a lot of it with me. But I mean, mostly it was just like what I saw in him, like the accountability that he was taking in all areas. Like that was the biggest eye opener for me. It's like, okay, something's happening here.
Yeah. This kind of leads nicely into the last topic, the last big topic we're going to talk about here, which is the untethering portion of this. And I want to start with the story, right? So there was this guy, okay, he went to great lengths to basically hate on us, right? So this guy, before you sign into the program, Charlotte, you have to fill out a pretty lengthy survey. Because we only take in like right now, it's about 5% of people who apply we take in. We're very like picky with who we select, because most people are just not at a position where they're coachable yet. So the person filled out the survey really nicely, and then he went on the call, and he went on the call with the sole purpose of telling us that we are trying to make men like simps, right? Like soft men. And we asked why. Well, how do you think this? Because he said, because your videos always tell me about how it's my fault, not the women's fault. And I'm supposed to take that and accept that. And I told my guys, like, for these moments, like this, you have one answer, right? It's like, your definition of men being simps is someone who actually looks within and realizes the problem is with them. To me, that's my idea of what a real leader looks like, right? And I think sometimes like people are tethered to their relationship, because when their partner comes home in a bad mood, for example, and they get in a bad mood because their partner's in a bad mood, the story that's going in their head is, again, that victim story of, you know, I deserve better than this. She shouldn't be doing this. If she doesn't even do this, then why should I? Those kinds of narratives, like the tit for tat thing that you were saying, the very childish tit for tat thing. And so a lot of people, right, when they're tethered, the state of tetheredness is not something you're ever conscious about. Because the voices that cause tetheredness just sound so right to you, you know? And so kind of curious from your perspective on when you, Thomas, and when you, Charlotte, like were first start thinking about this whole notion of being tethered, what was your journey in your mind? Feel free, anyone.
I found that component of the program to be the most interesting, and I just something I wasn't aware of in the same sense. Victim mindset, you know, like super important too, but that I kind of had an understanding of. But this is like this was new, and just kind of going like, okay, why am I doing this? You know, I want her to be happy. You know, why am I giving her flowers? I want her to be happy. I want her to love me. All of these kind of outcomes that I was seeking through my actions. And then being able to kind of see that, this is like, because I was so tethered. I would suffer if she didn't like what I was doing, or if she was angry with me. Like it would be, you know, it would be an internal travesty. But when I started realizing that, okay, I got to do this and act without fear, because that tetheredness made me really fearful in how I was behaving. And as soon as I was able to kind of, that wasn't like, oh, I'm, you know, throwing these old clothes off in an instance. That was slowly, you know, picking up thin layers time and time again. But that was really nice to kind of go, now, you know what, this is what I have to do like this, and there's going to be times here where she isn't going to like it or someone else isn't going to like it, but it's still the right thing. And it's part of the process. I'm just going to focus in on doing this thing right, because it's going to come good eventually. May not be tomorrow, but it's going to come good. And that was, yeah, understanding that was really cool, because that just that kind of that released the pressure on my chest that I would always feel around disappointing you or other people.
Charlotte, how about you? I know I left the question very broad on purpose, so if you need me to constrain that question, that's fine. Let me know.
No, that's okay. Guess the tethering for me, like when we would talk about that, it was, yeah, like I said before, just incredibly eye-opening about how it's almost like to me, it's twofold. So it's very ego driven, but it's also so almost like taking everything so personal from each other. So like when I say ego driven, it's like, well, he's doing this, and sort of like you said, you know, I deserve this, blah, 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 blah. Just like making everything about yourself that the other person is doing, and vice versa, and just sort of walking on eggshells around each other. And like you said, when you take a step back from that, like I can support you a lot better, and I can support myself a lot better if I'm focused on me from a really authentic place, focused on you from an authentic, like non-controlling place, and just, yeah, let ourselves be our own people. And if you come home in a bad mood, I don't need to take that on. I can say, okay, you know, what happened? I can listen to you without freaking out and panicking and, you know, getting just so like caught up in your emotions. And if you need to go and process that, how you need to process that, that's fine. I can still do me.
Yeah.
And just, keep not infect each other's energies constantly, which is a lot of what we were doing.
And this is like a very deep spiritual thing that we talk about in the program too. It's a very deep, multifaceted, like it affects your life in so many ways. But the basic crux for people to understand this untethering portion is really are you doing because you want to have, or are you doing because you are? Right. So in this case, like how a lot of people live their life is, like, for example, you, Thomas, you're saying, I will buy Charlotte flowers because I want to have this. I want to have this outcome where she's not mad at me. I want to have this outcome of whatever it is. And then what also happens is when you give her the flowers, let's say, and Charlotte doesn't respond in the way you want, because you want to have, and you no longer have, you start to get all pouty, right? So it affects you in so many ways like that too. And then it also makes you needy as a person. It makes you just very codependent. While the state of untethering is really doing because you are, right? You give Charlotte your flowers because that's who you are. And so even if you don't get the having, you're fine. And that's actually the state of that true leaders always accomplish, right? It's like they accomplish this, they get to this state of untetheredness, because a leader never says if the whole company is going like panicked. A leader cannot say, well, I'm panicked because my company is being panicked. You have to be the one to be untethered from that and go, I need to show who I am to these people. I need to inspire these people, not these people inspire me. So it's such it's a one thing that seems so simple, but it affects so many parts of your lives, you know, and as parents too, I'm guessing, right? You cannot be tethered to your kids. Like, there's no way.
I was going to say, it's like taming a toddler tantrum, right? Yeah. You have to, like, you can't contribute to their chaos. You have to bring the calm to their chaos. And obviously it's very different with a partner. You're not responsible for calming their chaos in the same way, but you certainly don't want to join in the chaos if that's what's happening for the other person. Yeah. And to go back to what we talked about in the beginning, which was the state of, we know what we should do that is right, but I just can't bring myself to do it. The reason why people get to that state, if you ever say, like, I know I'm supposed to be nice and not shout, but I can't, by definition, you got there because you were tethered. You got there because you were tethered, right? The same way, you wanted this having all along, but you couldn't have it.
And so you got all sad. When people give up, when their partners say, I want a divorce, and they are missing this massive opportunity that's staring them right in the face, by definition, they're tethered. Because again, the happiness taken away, they no longer want to do. So in order for us to even reverse the negative feedback loop in any relationship, whether that's relationship with our kids, work, in a romantic setting, one person has to untether first. One person needs to learn how to untether first. In your case, both of you did, right? Which is nice. It's amazing. But one person does. So for people who are saying like all these narratives about, well, if she's not starting, I'm not going to start. If she's doing this, I'm not going to do this. If she says it's over, then whatever, I'm not going to do. Think about like how tethered that is and how that tetheredness actually caused the demise of your relationship in the first place. And what we always say, right, is like, you cannot solve your problems using the same thinking you used to create it. Yeah. This tetheredness created it, and you're still trying to solve it with the same tetheredness, and you are rejecting new ideas that is telling you to untether with your same ideas of tetheredness. The whole thing just doesn't make sense. That's the best advice I can give to people too. And the other thing also is the voices of tetheredness will always seem correct to you. It will always seem true. Like when you say, if she doesn't do it, then why should I? That seems so correct, right?
Well, that seems fair and logical.
And it seems fair, logical is what everybody says. But again, the hardest part, I think, Thomas, and I think you face this too, is getting people to the point where you're getting them to question everything they think they know, everything they think seems right, so that we can make room for something better. And I think that was what you struggled with in the beginning, was like you weren't really ready to let go of what you thought you knew.
Oh, 100%. I knew it all already by then. I look back and I cringe. It's funny because like where I go and train, I probably in the last couple of years, I've really upped my time in a sauna. And that's kind of a good disarmed place. You get to talk to a lot of people. And there's some strong opinions, because I think it's that kind of bench setting where if you're going to say something, you're going to have a kind of a strong opinion. And yeah, it's more kind of a statement-like conversation versus nurturing in any form of way. And I realized saying it myself that the person I want to be is that I want to have strong opinions that I'm happy to change at any given moment. Yeah. Because if I can do that, then I'm actually open. Like I may believe something really, really strongly at this moment, and I'm gonna say it and share it, and be respectful. But if I hear something back, and if I can really listen and not take that rebuttal or that response in a negative way that affects me, if I can just listen, there is a new opinion that I can form from that. And I think that's how I want to be, and that's what is being untethered to me. And that doesn't always work, but if I'm in that, if I can stick to that, then yeah, I'm good. I'm learning. Yeah. And I'm guessing you're referring to the part in the program where we talked about like pride yourself in having no opinions, because it's how you start to unjam your character from this little bubble you've been living in too. And most people listening to this wouldn't understand, but I think that the takeaway from this is really, guys, like, we always say, if you came across like a program on relationships that literally tells you, I will teach you what to say and do. And this program is not a bigger program around like internal shifts, focusing on identity shifts, focusing on changing your whole paradigm, the internal mindset around relationships and who you're supposed to be, what growth is supposed to be. It doesn't make you question the way you interpret infidelity. It doesn't make you question the way you interpret like all the issues in relationships that people always think is black and white things. Then you are getting scammed.
Because by definition, people don't have relationship problems. People have problems with the self that reflects in that relationship, right? So most people, they don't need more tactics on what to do, what to say. They need the internal shifts to be able to actually allow them to do those right things and make it genuine and make it something you want to do, something you can sustain for the rest of your life. Because if you are trying to do new things with your old self, you're always going to feel forced. Again, it's like why people yo-yo diet, right? Because they haven't fundamentally become the person who is skinny or who is fit, whatever it is. They're just trying to be fit. They haven't become fit. So I get the question a lot of like why the internal shifts are so important. Is precisely that, right? If you want your changes to be genuine, you have to start with the internal shifts first, then everything else comes later. So we'll close off on that, guys. So again, thank you so much. I know having a five-month-old son is really difficult. So thank you for taking your time for doing this. But it's so nice to just finally like deconstruct your story too, because I like to do this with a lot of my clients. I like to understand like both perspectives, because that actually helps me help people better understand like people's lives better. Yeah, so I like to end it with this though. Charlotte, if you could, if there are women in the same position as you are in, where you said, I'm done, maybe dealing with a lot of infidelity issues, dealing with a lot of baggage, resentment, and you just have nothing in you to actually try to make this relationship work anymore. So if you were basically giving yourself, turning back time and giving your advice to yourself right now, back then, what would you say to an old version of yourself?
So I was thinking about this a lot when you were talking about the tethering, actually. If I could go back and change how I handled things the first infidelity, I would do that. I wasn't there yet. And I probably would have wanted to be really angry at someone if they told me this at the time, because I just was so not there in my mindset. I was so tethered to what, you know, what was fair, how could he, blah, blah, a victim, like such a victim. I would say very succinctly, you can't control what he's doing. Look at what you're doing. Work on yourself and what you're bringing to the situation. He's got to work on himself. Like there's no room, you know, that needs to be a separate thing. But you need to work on yourself and look at, you know, if you want to be in this relationship, how are you going to move forward? Because now in hindsight, I look at how I was, and I was so toxic. I really was. And I can own that now because I have that hindsight. And it took me a long time to realize that. But yeah, I was only responsible for me. But because I was so tethered to him and stuck in that victim mindset, like that was such a big blow to my ego in that tetheredness. I just thought, oh, it's all up to him. I deserve to be angry. I deserve to be resentful. I deserve blah, 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 me, where I really should have just been working on myself.
Yeah. Thomas, how about you?
Give advice to someone
yourself. To yourself. Way back then.
Way back then. I mean, I should have found the program after the first infidelity. That would have been better. Back to kind of when we, how would I advise myself? I think if I could have picked the thing to drill home to start off with and just kind of really wrap your head around this thing first. It's like, you know, this is something that's all up to you. And empowered myself from the beginning. And if it was just, this is all on you in a really good way. Yeah. Not the world on my shoulders, but this is all on you. You have this within your control. Go and find your happiness. Yeah.
And I think the hard part for you, Thomas, in the beginning was this program is so complex, but also it runs so counter to how you probably thought. And so there's probably a lot of things that I said that you're like, bullshit. I don't understand. I don't buy it. But I always say to people, like, whenever you learn something that makes you so utterly confused, overwhelms you, lean into it, because that's probably something that you needed. Because if it wasn't confusing to you, you would probably have figured out yourself and you would have done it already. But the very fact that you couldn't do it means that this confusion is like a good thing. Lean into it. And Charlotte, to bounce off yours too, I think the most beautiful thing about you guys' the journey here is, again, how both of you just focused inward and said, what can I do better? And once you focus on what you can do better, you start to manifest that positivity in a positive way that makes it easier for the other person to do it, which then makes it easier for you to continue, and just keeps going. And we always say in the program too, you know, when a couple is in a state where they're so on a brink of divorce, for example, there's so much resentment to the point where it's so easy to pin character issues with each other, and it's endless. This is what's wrong with you, this is what's wrong with you, etc. But I always say too, people are rarely a product of their character. People are always a product of their environment, and the environment is created by both of you. So when you start to change the environment, you'll be surprised as to how much you can change people's behaviors as well, and vice versa. So just take that as a takeaway for people, right? It's like, at this point, it's so easy to blame people, but just focus on one thing. Just focus on changing the environment. And it doesn't matter how toxic you think your partner is right now, how hopeless things are right now, what she says, her decisions. When you change the environment, you will change behavior. You will change decisions that both of you make very, very quickly. So yeah, I want to end on that. Thank you guys again. Have a good morning.
Thank you. Well, have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you. Thomas, I'll see you soon. Charlotte, I heard you're also doing the program a bit. So if you ever want to like hop onto the Facebook group and like see how things are going there, let me know. Like, it's no extra charge. So
I really should get into it. Sorry, I'm having a bit of a cough.
no worries.
I really should. This was a good reminder. Thank you.
Good. All right, guys. Cheers.
Perfect.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.